Robbie Robertson truly hated him more than anyone. Robbie Robertson was born Hemi Royale Robbie Robertson on July 5, 1943 in Toronto, Canada. Raised in a family of mixed heritage, his mother was of Mohawk and Kaga descent from the Six Nations Reserve in Ontario, while his father was of Jewish immigrant background. Robertson grew up surrounded by cultural traditions, folk stories, and music that would later shape his creative outlook. From an early age, he was drawn to the guitar, teaching himself how to play and developing a distinctive style that combined soulful rhythm, intricate picking, and a deep sense of storytelling. As a teenager, Robertson's passion for music led him into the burgeoning rock and roll scene in Canada. By his mid-teens, he was already performing in local bands, impressing older musicians with his technical skills and natural songwriting instinct. His big break came when he joined Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks, a group that played a gritty brand of rockabilly. Touring across North America with Hawkins was Robertson's first immersion into the demanding life of a professional musician. He not only sharpened his craft on stage, but also began forming lifelong bonds with his bandmates Levin Helm, Rick Danko, Richard Manuel, and G. Hudson. These relationships would prove vital when the Hawks eventually broke away from Hawkins to form their own group, later known simply as the band. The band's rise to fame in the late 1960s marked a turning point in rock history. With Robertson as principal songwriter and lead guitarist, the group redefined what rock music could sound like. Their 1968 debut album, Music from Big Pink, recorded in a house in upstate New York, was unlike anything the world had heard before, rooted in Americana, folk, country, and blues. It moved away from the psychedelic trends of the era and introduced a rustic, earthy sound that inspired countless artists. Songs like Earth Weight and Chest Fever became instant classics, celebrated for their timeless quality and poetic depth. As the creative force behind much of the band's catalog, Robertson penned songs that captured the essence of American life. Despite being Canadian himself, his lyrics evoked images of the rural South, the struggles of working people, and the deep soul of the human experience. Masterpieces like The Night They Drove, Old Dixie Down, Up on Creek, and It Makes No Difference remain some of the most evocative and enduring songs in popular music. His guitar playing, subtle yet powerful, never sought to overshadow, but instead elevated the storytelling of each song. Beyond his songwriting, Robertson was instrumental in shaping the band's image and direction. He often acted as the group's spokesman, guiding them through the turbulence of fame and the pressures of music industry. The band's collaboration with Bob Dylan during Dylan's controversial Electric Tour of 1965 to 1966 further cemented their legacy. Robertson and the group stood firm alongside Dylan as he faced jeers from audiences who resisted his transition from folk to rock, proving their resilience and commitment to artistic integrity. The band's career culminated with their legendary farewell concert, The Last Waltz, on Thanksgiving Day in 1976 at the Winterland Ballroom in San Francisco. Organized largely under Robertson's vision and directed by Martin Scorsese, the concert brought together a who's who of rock and folk legends, including Dylan, Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, Eric Clapton, and Van Morrison. The resulting film, also titled The Last Waltz, remains one of the greatest concert documentaries ever made, immortalizing Robertson's vision of music as both a communal experience and a historical narrative. After the band, Robertson embarked on a successful solo career, releasing a series of albums that showcased his evolving artistry. His self-titled debut solo record in 1987 blended rock with atmospheric production and featured collaboration with Peter Gabriel and U2, proving Robertson's ability to adapt to new musical landscapes. His later works increasingly reflected his indigenous heritage with albums like Intact from the Underworld of Red Boy 1998, incorporating native voices, chants, and themes bridging traditional culture with contemporary sounds. In addition to his music, Robertson forged a long and fruitful collaboration with filmmaker Martin Scorsese, scoring or contributing to numerous soundtracks, including Raging Bull, The King of Comedy, Casino, Gangs of New York, The Wolf of Wall Street, and The Irishman. His intuitive understanding of how music held enhanced storytelling on screen made him one of the most respected figures in film music. Robertson also wrote memoirs, most notably Testimony to a 16, in which he reflected on his journey through music, fame, and cultural discovery. The book, filled with warmth, humor, and candor, gave fans an intimate look at the man behind these songs. From his childhood influences to the complicated dynamics of the band and his enduring creative pursuits, on March 24, 1968, Robbie Robertson took an important step in his personal life when he married Dominique Bourgeois, a Canadian journalist. Dominique was the daughter of a film critic and professor, which meant that she had grown up in an environment deeply connected to art, culture, and intellectual pursuits. This marriage marked a period of stability for Robertson, who at the time was rising to international fame as the lead guitarist and chief songwriter for the band. Together, Robbie and Dominique became one of the more admired couples of the late 1960s and 1972. Navigating the pressures of fame, the demands of a relentless touring schedule, and the artistic life estalethid often strained relationships, Dominique, with her own career as a journalist, brought a sense of balancing intellectual companionship to Robbie's life, grounding him during years that could have easily been consumed by the chaos of the rock and roll world. Despite their strong bond, the marriage did not remain free of challenges. In 1977, during a period of tension and uncertainty in their relationship, Dominique filed for divorce. This was around the same time Robbie was making the life-altering decision to bring the band's era of touring to a close, culminating in the legendary concert film, The Last Waltz. The strain of Robertson's creative commitments, the festival associated with the music industry, and the natural stresses of raising a family in the public eye all played a role in their difficulties. However, the divorce Dominique initiated was never finalized, and after a brief separation, the two found a way to reconcile, remaining legally married for many more years. Ultimately, Robertson and Bourgeois' union endured until 2003, a testament to the depth of their connection despite the complexities that life placed in their path. Together, Robbie and Dominique raised a family that was central to Robertson's identity outside of music. They had 3 children, 2 daughters and a son, Sebastian. Robertson spoke often of how important his children were to him and how fatherhood gave him a sense of perspective that fame alone could not provide. His son, Sebastian, in particular, went on to follow in creative pursuits of his own, furthering family's connection to the arts. The family dynamic, while sometimes private, was a major part of Robbie's world, influencing his decisions and grounding him even as he traveled the globe and collaborated with some of the biggest names in music history. After his separation from Dominique, Robertson eventually found love again, though it will take many years for him to formally remarry. On March 12, 2023, just months before his passing, Robertson married his longtime girlfriend of 4 years, Janet Zuccarini, a Canadian entrepreneur and restaurateur widely respected in her field. Janet was not only successful in restaurant business, but was also well known to Canadian audiences as a judge on Top Chef Canada. She brought her own reputation for creativity, vision, and resilience, qualities that seemed to resonate deeply with Robertson, who had spent his life breaking new ground in music. Their marriage, occurring later in life, reflected not only Robbie's enduring capacity for love, but also his desire to build meaningful connections even as his health began to decline. When it came to the many friendships and rivalries that Robbie Robertson built during his extraordinary career, few relationships carried as much tension as one he shared with Paul McCartney. Although Robertson spent much of his life working alongside legends from Bob Dylan to Eric Clapton, his attitude toward McCartney was complicated, often marked by sharp criticism and even resentment. What made this dynamic so fascinating was the way Robertson, usually respectful of his peers, seemed to reserve some of his most cutting remarks and deepest frustrations for McCartney. Robertson, who had grown up in Toronto before making his way into the American music scene, admired the Beatles as much as anyone else in the 1960s. Yet, as he often revealed in private conversations and interviews, he felt that Paul McCartney was the one member of the group who rubbed him the wrong way. Paul always struck me as someone who had to be the center of attention no matter what, Robertson once remarked, describing him as over-polished and relentlessly controlling. For Robertson, who prided himself on authenticity and rawness in music, McCartney's carefully crafted image and melodic pop sensibilities seemed almost artificial. This dislike deepened when Robertson became part of Bob Dylan's circle. The band had been thrust into the spotlight as Dylan's backing group during his controversial Electric tours, and Robertson was acutely aware of the comparisons being drawn between Dylan's raw artistry and McCartney's more mainstream appeal. Paul was always trying to play it safe, Robertson said. Dylan risked everything. He put himself on the line, but Paul wanted it all tidy and clean. In Robertson's view, McCartney symbolized the very commercial side of music that the band sought to escape. Another source of Robertson's hostility stemmed from McCartney's dominant personality in collaborations during instances when Robertson and McCartney crossed paths, particularly at star-studded gatherings in the 1970s and 1980s. Robertson recalled feeling dismissed by him. He talked as if no O'Neills in the room mattered. Robertson complained. He had this habit of turning every conversation into a story about himself or the Beatles, while many musicians idolized McCartney. Robertson bristled at what he perceived as arrogance. Interestingly, Robertson even extended this animosity to the other Beatles. He often spoke with warmth about George Harrison, whom he considered spiritually grounded and musically adventurous, and even admired Lennon for his brutal honesty. Ringo Starr too was someone Robertson found affable and down-to-earth, but Paul McCartney, for reasons Robertson explained time and again, was the one guy I couldn't stomach. The contrast was striking. Robertson could find common ground with almost anyone in the industry, but when it came to McCartney, there was no reconciliation. Their paths continued to cross in latter years, often through shared connections like Clapton or at industry events. By 1982, when both men were firmly established as legends in their own right, Robertson had mellowed somewhat in his public statements, but the old disdain lingered beneath the surface. Irrespective what he accomplished, sure, Robertson said in one candid interview, but liking someone and respecting their successes are two very different things. What is perhaps most telling is how Robertson compared McCartney to Dylan, the man he considered his greatest musical partner. To Robertson, Dylan represented the risk-taking, uncompromising artist who dared to alienate audiences for the sake of truth. McCartney, by contrast, seemed to him like the ultimate crowd-pleaser, a man more concerned with topping charts than pushing boundaries. I've always been about the grit, the imperfections that make music real, Robertson reflected. Paul, he wanted the gloss. Even in his later years, Robertson's feelings about McCartney never softened entirely. While he could acknowledge him as the genius for melody and his role in shaping popular music, the personal friction between them remained a defining aspect of their relationship. In fact, when asked late in life which famous musician he had the hardest time getting along with, Robertson didn't hesitate. Paul, always Paul. There was just something about him that I couldn't take. Maybe it's my fault. Maybe it's just. But out of everyone I ever met, he was the one I truly hated more than anyone. This lingering hostility, thought unusual for Robertson, who typically valued harmony and collaboration, offered a revealing glimpse into the complex personalities behind rock and roll's greatest icons. It showed that even among the most celebrated musicians, clashes of ego, philosophy, and temperament could leave scars that never fully healed. Robbie Robertson, the legendary guitarist, songwriter, and founding member of the band, passed away on August 9, 2023 at the age of 80, marking the end of a remarkable life and career that had profoundly shaped the course of modern music. His death occurred in Los Angeles, California, where he had been living and receiving medical care during the final stages of his illness. According to reports, Robertson had been engaged in a courageous year-long battle with prostate cancer, a fight that he faced with dignity and quiet strength. Much as had approached challenges throughout his life. Even as his health declined, those close to him noted that he maintained his creativity and spirit, often speaking about unfinished musical ideas and the importance of storytelling through song, which had been the hallmark of his career for over 6 decades.